Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Soul Care Nomad. My name is Matthew Willbanks, and as always, I'm here with my good friend and mentor, Dr. John Okinaga, who is not in a suit or polo today.
No, I'm at home because school is closed. I was tempted to go in, but I'm like, I'll just record from home.
You'd be
So
like,
you get my messy office and whatever.
hey, you know what? It is what it is. But
Yeah.
it's okay because the camera's going to be cut to just, a little square for most of the time anyways.
Oh,
So,
sweet.
but
Well, we can do it from here more often then.
yeah. But how are you doing? I know it's been a while since we've seen each other.
I'm alive.
Yeah.
Actually, no, I just did a podcast with Keith Palmer, and I said, I think this is one of the first times where I'm not exhausted at the end of the semester. So that's, that's a miracle. But I didn't travel as much. I've been good with time in the Word, time just seeking God, and I mean the only thing that changed was I didn't speak every weekend this semester, so that's a bonus.
Yep.
But just cutting back on some stuff, and
Hmm.
I'm good. I'm ready for Hawaii.
Oh yeah, you'll be going
When does
there
this thing get posted?
whenever I can edit it.
Yeah, so probably by the time this is posted, I think I'll be in Hawaii.
Okay.
Well, no, if it's the first week of December, I'll still be here in Texas.
We'll still have prayers for
Yeah,
traveling mercies and all that jazz.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're wrapping up. You're wrapping up the semester. I'm still hunkering down here in East Texas, but things are moving and going in the right direction. And there's a couple things that have happened in both of our lives within the last few years, and it kind of brings up what we want to talk about is kind of this idea of testing, and especially how it applies to counseling. And so,
Hmm.
Dr. O, what is the biblical definition of a test?
Biblical definition of a test? Well, I mean, Paul talks about a thorn in his side. That can be a test. Another test is, are you going to be obedient? That's another test.
Mm.
Um, are you going to listen? Are you going to live a life that brings God praise, glory, and honor? That's a test. And in our culture and society today, that's not always easy.
Mm-hmm.
Tests can also look like physical ailments. How are you going to handle being sick? How are you going to handle relationship issues? How are you going to handle being a good father when your son is going nuts? Those are so tests are just different in different seasons. And so a test for you might be taking tests soon. Well, actually, no. For a doctoral program, we don't have tests. You just write papers. But
Right.
ultimately, that's a test. It's testing your ability to complete work on time. So
Mm-hmm.
test takes various forms, but I think what I see in counseling, what people come in for, are usually physical tests. Like they're going through it with diseases or cancer or something along those lines. That's a test. Are you going to trust God in that? Other things that we see in counseling that can be a test is, are you going to be a good steward of your time? That's another test that we need to consider. And what's other things that I see in counseling? Relationships. Right now I'm supervising a couple, and they're newly married. They're going through a testing of the covenant that they created. One is like, I want to get out of Dodge, and I'm like, yeah, no. there, there, there's zero grounds for getting out of Dodge, and just because you don't like how someone makes you feel all the time is not a reason to get a divorce. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah, I mean, tests is anything that God allows, any sort of difficulty or
Yeah.
thing that God allows. But also, I think a test can be when we have an abundance of things and how we use that abundance. And so, kind of what we want to do is we want to kind of look through Scripture, as we should do as biblical counselors, and we look at the life of Joseph. And
Mm,
there are 3 points in Joseph's life in chapters 39, 40, and 41 that really speak to not just how people are supposed to work in tests, but also how God is still uh, around and involved in our lives through these tests. And so we get to chapter 39, verse 2, and this point I think is important, especially when we're going through tests, is chapter 39, verse 2. The Lord was with Joseph. And I think this is important that we need to see in every thing that we do for any sort of test that we have, is that God is still with us. But with that comes the first test, and that's persistence. Uh, Joseph was with the Lord, he was always engaging in the Lord, but so was temptation. Temptation
mm,
was pushing against Joseph. And we see that in Potiphar's wife. Now, Dr. O, we want to be practical. And so obviously, we want to say, we'll just stay in the word and everything will be fine.
mhm,
But temptation can present itself in two ways, very subtly, but then out in the open, in your face.
mhm.
And so, with this first test of persistence, how do we stay firm in God's word?
Well, I mean, there's a video by Bob Newhart that he basically just says, "Stop it," when dealing with temptation. And I've got some pushback from students. I don't like that video. Well, I don't really care if you like that video, but at the end of the day, it's pretty simple. Like when it comes to temptation, you're right. There's in your face things. So I mean, if you struggle with alcohol, don't go to a bar. Stop it. You struggle with lust. Yeah, don't watch things on TV that you shouldn't be watching. Stop it. I mean, it's very simple for those things that are quote unquote in your face. But I think where a lot of people get stuck in, you nailed it, the subtle things, like the
Mm-hmm.
little things, and the little things where they're, oh, it's not that big a deal. I'm not hurting anyone.
Mm,
Well, it's still called sin.
right.
But I think we justify, and this is a subtle sin for, well, it's not subtle. It's not subtle anymore. I mean, look at me. I've gained quite a few pounds since I came to Texas. But I mean, a subtle thing is overeating or comfort eating.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that big a deal. Well, I'll tell you what, you eat a bunch of, ding dongs and ho hos every night for, a couple months. It's no longer subtle. It becomes a bigger issue. And I think a lot of times with sin, or a lot of times with counseling issues, it's the subtle things that get Christians stuck, So that, and even for those, stop it.
Mm-hmm.
So a simple fix for some of those subtle things is realizing that my body is a temple, that I need to honor the body that God gave me. So that's the biblical basis for everything. But here's some other things, like stop it. Stop buying ding dongs and ho hos.
Mm,
And actually, I joke about that because that's not my struggle. I don't like ding dongs or hoes, to be honest. I don't like sweets. But you put a spam musubi in front of me,
mm,
those suckers are gonna get inhaled real quick. Or when you guys come over for uh, the parties and whatnot, I have a lot of leftovers. Maybe
yeah.
give it away instead of keeping it for myself. So I think that's how we do it. Subtle temptation. We've talked about life dominating sins and the big things, but
Mm,
it's the subtle things that also get us into trouble. So great pointing that out.
yeah, because I mean, that's how Potiphar's wife approached Joseph. It was always in private, and then it
Mhm,
became more out front. But I think another thing needs to be pointed out is, especially in the subtleties of temptation, we need to go ahead and start replacing that with time in God's word, anyways.
mhm,
Um, because I know for me, I like watching a lot of different shows, engaging in a lot of different media. And there's a lot of little things that pop up in some of the shows. And it's just like, no, I'm not going to continue to watch this because I know it's going to lead me into thinking about other things. And
yeah.
so, what what you do in the subtlety is very different. And I think that's one thing that Joseph points out, is he's continually consistent in saying no.
Mhm, yeah.
Especially we see in verse 8, He says, "Look, with here my master does not concern himself with anything in his house, but has put all that he owns under my authority. No one in this house is greater than I am. He has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. So how could I do this immense evil, and how could I sin against God?" This is the perspective that Joseph has that we need to have as well.
Yeah.
Every little thing we do always reflects God, and it also reflects our relationship with God.
Yeah.
And so, if we're going to be persistent in going back to God and doing what He says is good, that shows who we are. And I think that's the important thing. So, anything else you have to add on this first topic?
Oh, but temptation is real. I
Mm-hmm.
think that and then sin is insidious. It creeps in all the little ways. If you had told me how long I've been here in Texas, coming up on 12 years in a month, if you had told me 12 years ago that my struggle would be to keep off weight, I would have said you're on drugs.
Mm,
Like that was not an issue for me in California. And no, nope. But temptation is just, one of the analogies I use is even addressing, life dominating sins. We think that we can just leave just a little bit. Like we don't have
mm-hmm.
to submit everything to the feet of Christ. But an infection that was at 100%, it goes down to 1%. If that 1% remains, guess what's still there? The infection,
Mm-hmm.
and that's sin. Like it's a total mortification of sin, putting all of it to death.
Mm,
Otherwise, it's going to come back to bite you. And for me, I struggled with a lack of self control. Would be with drugs, alcohol. The lack of self control was with working out too much or whatever. Well, lack of self control is something that comes back to bite me in the butt all the time.
mm,
Where there's lack of self control with time management, working too much,
mm-hmm.
and that's ultimately an issue that I need to take care of.
Yep.
So yeah.
So then we move on in the story of Joseph into chapter 40, and Potiphar got super desperate and tried to grab Joseph, and Joseph ran away. And then there was false accusations, false imprisonment, all the
Mm.
good stuff. And then Joseph ends up in jail, and God gives him the ability to interpret dreams. And as we look at chapter 40, um, in verse 8 again, Joseph says, "Don't interpretations belong to God?" So again, even in the pit of the prison, Joseph is still thinking about God. And according to where was it, 39, yeah, 39:21, the Lord was with Joseph and extended his kindness to him. So the Lord's still with Joseph in all this. And so Joseph then interprets the dreams of two prisoners, and they come true. And Joseph is like, "Hey, don't forget me, please." And then they end up forgetting him, and he's in prison for another 2 years. So then the second test we deal with in life has to do with patience.
Mm.
Why is patience so difficult, Dr. O?
Because we live in a microwave society and we want things like today, like now. One of the analogies that you've heard me use in class a lot is you have a choice: steak and lobster or a TV dinner.
Hmm,
And I asked the class, how many of you want steak and lobster? And pretty much every hand goes up. But steak and lobster requires time.
hmm,
But we live in a society that we're not willing to wait for anything. We want things on our time now.
hmm,
And what we need to realize is that our time is not perfect, but God's timing is.
hmm,
And learning to wait upon Him. One of the verses that I have tattooed across I have a bunch of tattoos on my body, but one of them is Psalm 46:10. Be still and know that I am God. When I first got sober, patience was one of my weakest things.
hmm,
And another verse is, "They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They'll mount up with wings like eagles. They'll run and not be weary. They'll walk and not faint." And basically, it's like just learning to wait and rest on God's timing.
hmm,
Because once again, His timing is perfect. Um, you know that I've had some opportunities elsewhere to work, and I've turned them down. And I think by the time this podcast comes out, it'll be official. But I got a new job. It's part time, not full time. Um, but this is the perfect opportunity for this season of life.
mm,
And looking back, if I had gone ahead and gotten ahead of God for certain things, this opportunity would have never have taken place.
mm,
And this in this instance, it's perfect for my health. It's perfect for Nicole. It's perfect for James. This church just loves on them financially, like in absolute blessing.
mhm,
Um, but just timing, like just waiting, it has taught me that if I had done things on my time, I'd probably be miserable wherever I'm at.
right.
But because I've learned to be still and just wait. I'm still teaching full time at Southwestern. Swibbits loves the decision. They're fully on board. Dr. Shirley, Madison, Dr. Dockery, they're all like, yes, great, great opportunity for partnerships. And the church originally wanted me to be full time. I said, nope, can't be full time. This is what I can. I counter proposed, hey, I can do part time, and yeah,
Mm,
perfect timing.
yep.
So just learn to wait.
Yeah. Because I think the big thing is we want to be in control, and that's not always a good thing. Um, with a situation like this, it places the authority in the hands of the Lord and not in us.
Yeah.
And I know what's best for me, though. So I know exactly what I need to do, and that's it. And that's prideful, it's
Yeah.
arrogance. And that destroys churches, that destroys lives. And I think this is one of the things about Joseph that's so great that we need to kind of emulate, not because Joseph is so great, but because God was the one who gave him this patience. Like,
Mm.
God was providing for him the whole time, even when he was being threatened to be killed and sold into slavery. God was still with him and still providing for him.
Yeah.
And though that provision didn't seem very good, I mean, in the end, when we get to the end of the story, we see that lots of people are saved because of this patience that Joseph had to wait on God's plan. And so ultimately, it's a problem of control, is what I think. That
Hmm.
there's a lack of control that I have, and I need to do whatever I can to get that control back.
Yeah.
And when we place things in the hands of the Lord and we say, God, it's in your timing, not mine, then that is difficult, but at the same
Hmm.
time, it's also freeing to know that it's the Lord who's going to work, not me. I just need to do whatever I need to do. And we see Joseph doing that. He was continuing to do, the things that he was asked to do. He was put in charge of all the prison, and he continued to do that for the next 2 years. He didn't try to get out of prison by any means. And I think that speaks volumes to us in our situation that there's still work that we need to do. We can't just give up and just go, all right, God, whatever you want to do, just do it. There's still little things that we need to be doing, right?
Hmm.
Um, so patience, I think, is a important thing that we also need to have down. And then we get to our third point in chapter 41, and this is the purpose. Ultimately, we see the purpose that God had for Joseph's
Mm.
life, and it wasn't what we thought it was.
Yeah.
Um, he gets called up in front of Pharaoh saying, hey, I hear you can interpret dreams. And for a lot of people, this is kind of what they think is like, oh, my purpose is my skills, my abilities. And that's not what we see here.
Mm.
This is something that God uses to show
Yeah.
Joseph, hey, you have a greater purpose than just this one thing. But ultimately, we see that as Joseph interprets Pharaoh's dreams, he gets put in charge again of everything, all of Egypt, and ends up saving not just the people of the land, but also his brothers who tried to kill him.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to purpose, I mean, God has a different plan for every single person.
Yeah.
Um, I know for you, Doctor, I didn't expect to be in Texas for this long or at all.
No. No, I was supposed to be out of here. The first time when I came in 14, I was supposed to be out of here in 16.
Mm,
And then when I did my PhD, then I was supposed to be out of here by 19 to to go work in rehab centers and make the big bucks.
Mm.
No, my purpose for coming to Texas was not to stay here.
Mm-hmm.
Why would I want to stay in Texas? It's hot. There's no ocean.
Yeah.
Gulf of Mexico or Gulf of America, depending on where in the political spectrum you land, is not an ocean. It's not a beach. It's mud.
Mm-hmm.
It's a saltwater lake.
Yeah.
And I'm just joking. But I love Texas.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. If I was to move, just Hawaii. But even even at that, Hawaii's not an option. I
Mm.
can't afford it. Um, Price out of paradise is a phrase people say, but purpose. You may think that you have an idea of what you want to do, but we need to remember that our purpose is not to bring glory to ourselves or to advance our own careers. Our purpose isn't to get our kids into Harvard or Yale. Our purpose isn't to get things. Our purpose is to serve.
Mm-hmm.
And when we serve God, you know, doesn't mean it's easy, doesn't mean you're going to get everything you want, but when you're following through what God has placed in front of you, you can put your head on the pillow at night and go to sleep with peace,
Yep.
and that is priceless.
Yeah. Proverbs 16:9. A person's heart plans his ways, but the Lord determines his steps.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that Joseph definitely saw, because he thought he was just going to be in his home working for his father for the rest of his life. And then he ends up being second in command in Egypt. Um, and though majority of us aren't going to get that kind of purpose, I mean, it'd be nice, but that's just not how it is going to be. I still think, though, that the Lord being with Joseph and the Joseph continuing to doing whatever he needed to in that moment, fighting temptation, being persistent with the Lord, being patient while he was waiting for God to work. He finally gets that purpose. But then again, like I said at the beginning, we can also be fight the temptation for abundance. Joseph could have taken his position and done whatever he wanted and
Mhm.
gone away from the Lord, but he didn't. He never did. Through the rest of his
Yeah.
life, he was still consistently with the Lord. And so, one of the things then that we have to figure out is, what is the purpose of abundance? And we look at Moses or excuse me, Abraham, who had a lot. He was
Mhm.
one of the richest men in the area, but he didn't hold that to himself. He
Yeah.
gave half of his stuff to Lot whenever they separated. I mean, there's a great thing, and it always goes back to Genesis 11 or 12, where it says, I will bless you so that you can be a blessing to others.
Yep.
And our purpose then isn't to hoard all of this, it's actually to be a
Sure.
blessing to others.
Yeah.
So,
One of the things that I watch with my grandparents and my parents is, we've never been rich. We're not wealthy. We've
mm,
never had, generational wealth is what, but we're not poor either. But I've always seen them giving it away,
mm,
just helping those in need. And if there's one, and, purpose, talking about purpose is also like, I want to model that for James.
mm.
He's not quite there yet. This past Sunday, he got his allowance, and he still doesn't understand the concept of tithing, giving it away. Um, but we have a long way to go. Anyway,
Right.
we'll just go on a little tangent. I said, James, you got $10 for your allowance, so you need to give $1 to the church. And he was like, no. And he has been good about it, but this past Sunday he just fought it.
Mm,
And I was like, James, but what if there's a little boy who's going to be able to get some chicken nuggets this coming Thanksgiving? And he goes, you can buy it for him, Daddy. The reason I share that is it's not easy for some people to bless others.
hmm
They want to hold on to things because, and when we hold on to things, ultimately what it shows is we don't trust God.
Mm,
That's what it comes down to. And what I told James in the end, he finally, the next, this is, we had that talk Saturday, and then on Sunday he woke up and he was like, here's my dollar to give to God. And it took him time to realize that dad, me, is going to take care of him.
mm-hmm.
And it's the same way that we got to realize in being a blessing to others that God will provide.
Yep.
Not what we want, but our needs will always be provided.
Mm,
So,
yep. And again,
and I'll be
that
honest, keep this in. I did not like this original format that Matt is doing. We even took a pause, like, bro, this is not what we signed up for. But Matt, I appreciate you thinking outside the box, and we're gonna do this model more often. I'm really
cool.
grateful for the work that you put in to this new format. I really like how it came out. So
Yeah.
this is me acknowledging the old man was wrong, the young buck was right, and I need to give him credit where credit is due. Good job.
Thank you. Yeah, he was like, "Hey, we're not doing a sermon. That's not what we're doing." I was like, "Hold on, I'm not. I'm gonna try not to talk as much."
That's
Um,
nothing. Shut up. It's not about you talking too much. I'm like, there's enough podcasts that preach. We're not going to do that. But,
no, no.
it's, you're a blessing to me.
Thank you.
So, yeah. Anyway, enough getting mushy. Let's finish. Let's close this up.
All right. So again, final thought: purpose is going to be different for everybody, but
Yeah.
ultimately, God has something in mind for each of us.
Mm-hmm.
And when we are in tune with the Lord, doing what He wants, our purpose is going to become clear, and it might be different from
Yeah.
what we originally think, and that's okay. Like I thought I was going to do youth ministry for my entire life, and that was not God's plan. That I'm going back to Southwestern to go full force into counseling is, you know, wasn't what
Someone
I
told you to
originally
do
thought.
2 years ago.
Right? Yeah, I know. But that's again the stubbornness of me and the arrogance and pride of me of just like, no, I think this is what I'm going to do, and then all of a sudden it's just like, nope.
Hey, at least I never said I told you so.
You got close a couple times.
No, I'm not. I'm proud of you.
All right, Dr. O, do you have any final thoughts as we wrap up this episode?
God is good.
Mm,
As we just leaving Thanksgiving, I hope that each and every one of you had a great Thanksgiving with family and friends. And as we launch into the Christmas season, it's not happy holidays, y'all. Don't don't fall for that rubbish. It's Merry Christmas,
mm.
and set yourself apart this Christmas season and say Merry Christmas. That's one of my pet peeves. That's what I can close with. I can do what I want. You will never catch me saying Happy Holidays. I was once at a job and they said the company policy is to say Happy Holidays. So I said Happy Holidays and Merry Christmas.
Oh,
So
well,
celebrate the reason for the season, and that's not getting or giving gifts; it's celebrating Christ's birth.
yep. The greatest gift.
Huh?
The greatest gift.
The greatest gift. Yeah.
Yep. And so, thank you for tuning in to this episode. Thank you for tuning in every month. We're going to have to figure out how we're going to record in December because 5 hours is quite the leap in time.
And we'll figure it out.
We'll get there when we get there. Thank you for listening to this episode of Soul Care Nomad. All of our good stuff is in the description, such as our website, soulcare.io, email, and Dr. O's X account, which he is, posting on there sometimes, mainly for our blog posts.
I'm horrible at that. People are like, "Oh, you need to post more." I'm like, "Yeah, I'll
You don't
pass."
have to. That's fine. This is enough for you at this point.
It's a way that it is more than enough social media for me.
All right. Well, thank you so much for listening, and we will see y'all in the next one.
All right, bye. Be good. Don't be stupid.
Bye, everybody.